The current sex education system is failing our youth in America. And when I say sex education, I'm not talking about the 2019 Netflix original series, Sex Education. There's 37 states that require that when taught sex education, that they must include abstinence. And 26 of those require it to be very stressed, which is what the Abstinence Education Program of definition, funding, and the impact on teen sexual behavior says about what is focused around teaching sexual education. Now, everyone's gone through either a health class or that weird sex unit that they have, but it's very short. And there's more to sex education than learning how to put a condom or what diseases you can catch. Sexual education can be as deep as learning about the different sexualities and sexual harassment and consent. Everyone's been through something close to it. For the past few weeks, I've been reading about the pros, the cons, and facts about the different types of sexual education and how the system works. And being a young adult in today's society and being a person that's open and a person that was lacked sexual education in school in the younger years, I believe that I am credible enough to help inform and to help persuade why we should take this more seriously and should include it more in depth in our classes in schools. Where schools should teach kids to be more in depth about sexual topics, so they are more equipped to handle their sexualities as well as the sexual relations with other people. Starting with schools, they should have qualified sex educators to talk about topics such as sex between people of different genders, different sexualities, harassment, consent, victim blaming, and we can do this by encouraging students to ask these questions about these topics. Now, knowing what sexual education is like a key idea of understanding what the topic is, but knowing the objectives can benefit everyone. So sexual education is supposed to be about the student, the child learning. It's supposed to be about them. And one of the many objectives of sexual education is to help children understand their body structures of both men and women and to help acquire their knowledge for birth, which is what the Wiccans Health Services had said. It teaches an individual about self-acceptance and its attitude and skills about interpersonal relationships. And relationships are a main component of living. Everyone has a relationship with something or someone. And we all know relationships can be confusing by themselves. But knowing what is normal for everyone can be pretty hard. Everyone has their own version of normal. So getting into a relationship that everyone's on the same page makes things a lot more easier. For example, if one person thinks that they should wait to have sex or is taught that they should have sex after marriage, and the other person is taught to have sex whenever they want, but they should know the aware of what could happen, and the views of understanding the other person can be a challenge, where learning about one topic or learning about one type of sexual education can become a boundary. You become enclosed, and you just think black and white. The school system only focuses on really two types. Abstinence only, which is focused exclusively on postponing sex until marriage. Or there's comprehensive sexual education, which explains the consequences of sexual decision-making. Research published by the Public Library of Science shows that when sexual education is comprehensive, students feel more informed, they make safer decisions, they have healthier outcomes, which results in fewer unplanned pregnancies and protection against sexual transmitted diseases and infections. There are different types. For example, holistic sex education, which is defined as learning the conjugative, emotional, social, and interactive, which is from the WHO/European World Health Organization. When emphasized on holistic development, it teaches children to have more of a mature and more educated view about sex. It allows a parent or instructor to give more trusted information. The outcome of being taught sex ed can vary from person to person, so they can accept themselves and their self-worth, which can help children for the rest of their lives. For being able to accept themselves and their boundaries, they must learn how to accept others and their boundaries as well. Anyone can be a victim as well going into this. So when you know someone else's boundaries, it makes things easier. But anyone can be a victim. Students, workers, parents, teachers, anyone, and almost everyone has experienced sexual harassment by having their boundaries crossed. So some schools teach students, mostly girls, that if they're being harassed, it's something they did wrong, which the Gale General One File did an article on a student's story of a Catholic school, why of their way of teaching sexual education and harassment. The girl stated, "As a teen, when I was harassed, I thought I did something wrong." But there's a mix-up, because she didn't do anything wrong, really. The sexual harassment in the Webster Dictionary is defined as an uninvited and an unwelcomed verbal or physical behavior. So, and also, they also have, the Webster Dictionary says that the legal definition of sexual abuse is the infliction of sexual contact upon a person by forcible compulsion. So schools do not talk enough about how this thing called force, people can get confused by it, and they need to be taught what they can and can't do. When taught correctly, there's a large probability that sexual education helps teenagers understand themselves biologically and prepare them to face the adult world, so they do not fall victim to sexual predators. This is why there needs to be classes and the correct people teaching students what to look for. And speaking of finding people to teach, when teachers teach sexual education, they sometimes find themselves misleading or difficult or discomfort to teach certain topics. And when searching for the right person for sex education, the person should practice what they preach. And there's a difference for a person saying to a student, "Don't have sex or catch a disease, my experience." No, we don't want that. We don't want just experience. The correct situation should be a person who has done research, who is a professional with a degree possibly in the subject, and it makes them more credible, because you don't want to have a person telling your kids, "Don't have sex, I had it, I caught something, you're going to catch something." No, we don't want that. But once having the correct instructor of all things talked about so far, it will benefit children of all ages. Schools should teach kids more in depth about sexual topics, so they are more fully equipped to handle the sexualities and help with their sexual relations with other people. So schools should have qualified sex educators to talk about these topics, such as what we've talked about, which is the different sexualities and learning the different types, sexual harassment, consent, victim blaming, and we can do this by encouraging students to ask these questions. So instead of going to your latest episode of Sexual Education on Netflix, look into helping children learn things that can help them prevent themselves from getting into situations they can avoid, and helping them learn things to understand themselves.